welcome to the session on how to write a research proposal. In today's session, we'll broadly be following this structure. Sana, the next slide. Yeah. So first we'll discuss what is a research proposal, introducing the key components of a research proposal, how to draft a research proposal, which would basically give you a step-by-step guide to writing a research proposal, then general tips for writing a strong proposal, and the further resources that you can kind of take help from in writing a proposal. This will be followed by, as I said, Q&A. I would now like to introduce the panelists for today. We have with us Sana Shah, who is a PhD researcher at the Department of History, University of Oxford. And our second speaker is Vidushi Shukla, who's also a PhD researcher, School of GeoSciences, University of Edinburgh. Before we move on, I would like to reiterate that please keep yourselves selves muted during the duration of the presentation, and after the presentation, you can unmute yourself when you're asked to, in case you want to ask a question. And feel free to also post questions in the chat box. I will now hand over the session to the speakers. Sana.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you so much, Monica, and all of you for joining us today. I will right away begin with the session. And as you know that we all are discussing the what is basically a research proposal, right? How to do a research proposal. I hope I'm audible. In case the voice cracks at any time, please let me know. So, research proposal, as we all, do these sessions by now, we try to understand the what, why, how, what is a research proposal? Why do we need one? How do we write one, right? Therefore, to begin with, the first step is to ask the what question. What is a research proposal? Why do we need it, right? So a research proposal outlines what you plan to research, why it's significant, and how will you conduct it. Research proposal basically is important for early researchers and people who are maybe writing a dissertation, doing the master's, writing a PhD thesis, doing a postdoc, etc. So wherever we need a research proposal, and after, especially in Indian education system, we do these entrance exams, and after which we're supposed to, or we asked to, the requirement is to submit a research proposal to tell us, to tell the panel, to tell the committees that what is it that we are trying to work on, what are the questions that we're trying to research on, and therefore we'll need a research proposal. In the research proposal, you clearly have to outline what is it that you plan to research. Why is the topic that you're planning to research important? Why is it significant? And how basically will you conduct that research? So the purpose basically is to show the panelists, to in fact, even to ourselves, a clarity of thought, that we are clear in our head about what we want to research, what we want to study, and therefore to build on it in a coherent manner, in a logical manner. There is a systematic way of doing it, which a research proposal must abide by at all times. And of course, the second purpose is it's a practical way to go about researching. It is to convince the readers, your advisors, your committees, your funders. Sometimes you also apply for scholarships based on your proposal, right? So you have to convince them that your research is worth undertaking and that you have a clear plan to execute it. How do we know that we have a clear plan to execute it? Your research proposal will tell it. The clarity of thought in your research proposal, therefore, will let the readers know that, okay, you have a plan and this is how you propose to do it. Now, these are the key components of a research proposal. Oftentimes, these are the things which nobody usually teaches in this education system by itself. So we are therefore at a loss. People keep asking, what is it that will go into a research proposal? How do we write one? What are the key components? Sometimes we only have introduction and then we go to literature review. Sometimes we only have research questions and a literature review. And it's largely incomplete if we leave out all of these components. So what are the key components? Any good research proposal needs to have a title. Well, this can be tentative, a working title basically. It needs to have a crisp introduction and background. It then needs to have a statement of problem. What is that? We will come to it, but just to flag it, a statement of problem, which is also known as statement of subject, a literature overview, and we very consciously mentions the term overview and not a review. We will come to that. Why is it so? Then a research question, research objectives. Sometimes only research questions are enough. You don't really put research objectives, but entirely up to you. A methodology, a section on methodology, definitely, and references. Now, these are the bare minimum components that should be in a research proposal. You can also expand this. It can sometimes have a section on ethics, sometimes a section on outcomes, sometimes a section on the time duration, basically, of the whole process, right? So let's talk about the starting points. To talk about the introduction, um, we all start when we think of how to do a research proposal, how to write a research proposal. We need to have a research problem to work with, and this could come from an observation, something we read, something we saw, a claim someone made that we think needs to be explored more, a hunch or an intuition about something. It can flow, the questions can flow from our own experiences in our day-to-day lives. It could be a policy issue, it could be different conditions. Now, from all of these are basically starting points that can be beneficial in helping us arrive at a problem that is researchable, right? Now, it cannot be simply like, uh, I think the weather is getting bad day by day. Now, that's my observation, but that's not a problem per se. That's a general observation. But based on that observation, I could probably come to a research question. I could probably think of why is it that, weather feels like this at this point of the year. Based on that, you could have climate-related questions, research questions coming up, environment-related questions, research questions coming up, or even the politics around weather, climate, etc. Environment, making it as a problem which is worthy of research. And when you have a research question, when you have a research problem, based on that, you devise your methodology. Based on your research problem, you think, okay, how will I approach this problem, which will basically then define your methodology. So how basically now let's go to the how question. How do I write a research proposal? Okay. Uh, so I know what I want to study. If you have a clear idea at this point, you have some idea that what you want to study, why you want to study, you have your clear reasons. Um, it's basically a myth that I know how exactly I want to study it. At this point, no. A research proposal is simply a tentative outline of how, what, why you want to do it. But it's not precise and it might change. Once you get in a program and there could be revisions to it, you might read up more on a specific topic later and therefore it'll change accordingly. Your method may change accordingly. How you approach that subject may change accordingly. So three questions that you should have in your mind is what do you plan to accomplish in your research? Why do you want to do it? How are you going to do it? This is something that cannot be understated, and you must be clear on these three uh, points. Now let's go to the step-by-step writing guide. What exactly will go into a research proposal? I have discussed and flagged the elements already. Now let's discuss those elements in detail. So first is the working title. Of course, your dissertations will not be without a title. It's important to have a title, but how do we decide what the title is? Once you know what you're going to work on, create a title that is clear, concise, and informative. It should very clearly at the outset indicate the focus of your study. For instance, if I want to look at the impact of urbanization on local biodiversity, I will simply keep it this way, the example in front of you. The impact of urbanization on local biodiversity, a study of Indian metropolitan cities. So in this title, you can see it gives away what I'm trying to study. I'm trying to study the impact of urbanization on local biodiversity, but I also give away where I want to study it. So basically, I'm telling which is the scope of my study. My scope is limited to the study of Indian metropolitan cities only, and therefore I've spatially rooted my research in Indian metropolitan cities. I'm not going beyond this. I'm not going to study West. I'm not going to study other countries. I'm not going to study non-metropolitan cities, but Indian metropolitan cities. So in this title, I make it very clear. It's also a good idea in the beginning if you're not very sure about where your study will go, which direction it will take. You can also keep a large, broader, ambiguous title, and you will always have the chance, depending on the university guidelines, to rework your title. But always keep it informative and it should give away what you're trying to study. Now, you cannot do, like, for instance, if I'm going to research on urbanization, on local biodiversity, I can't keep a title which says the impact of urbanization on climate. I'm studying local biodiversity. It has to be there, right? It cannot simply be climate. It cannot be the politics. It cannot be anything other than what I'm trying to study. Now, the second bit of your proposal, and this is very important, keep it crisp, is your introduction. In your introduction, you simply have to tell what is it that you want to study. Not more, nothing more than that, nothing less than that. Simply give an overview. Briefly explain the context of your research and its importance. Clarity of concepts is very important because it's sometimes what happens is that in the introduction only, we give away certain concepts. But don't put concepts unless you're very sure about it, unless you're sure that you want to use those concepts and how these are important to your study, right? And then, of course, in your introduction, you will always talk about how this research fits into the research priorities of particular subject area, which means if you're studying politics or if I'm studying ecosystem, I'm studying environment, how is this for instance, this title, how is the impact of urbanization on local biodiversity? How is this significant or relevant to my discipline, to my particular subject? If I'm studying environment, how is it important or relevant to that subject? Please be mindful that introduction is not to build suspense. We are not writing a crime thriller. We're not writing a thriller screenplay. We have to make things easier, and this should be a task for any. Basically, this is the first step to any writing. Think about the reader first. Make things easy for the reader. Don't leave room for interpretations unnecessary. Don't build suspense. Keep it very clear, concise. Tell in the first go itself. Introduction is your chance to tell the reader what your research is about and how do you intend to do what you propose to do. So keep it as clear as you want to. And why clarity of concepts is also important. Let's look at this title again. The title is here, Impact of Urbanization on Local Biodiversity. What are the concepts here? The first concept there is urbanization. So this will definitely feature in my introduction. The other is local biodiversity. How do I understand local biodiversity? So in the title itself, there are two important concepts which will guide my research, and therefore it is important to incorporate them in my introduction in a way that tells the reader what I'm going to do with these concepts. Second is a statement of problem, which is also known as a statement of subject. So this is now this is simply an expansion of your introduction. That I understand there are a lot of things that you want to give away in the introduction itself, but those things which can wait and are an expansion on your introduction can find a place in your statement of problem section. So you basically describe the larger context or the situation surrounding the problem. You give the background information to the to help the reader understand the logic, the rationale of your proposed study. Why are you doing what you're doing, and clearly indicate that why should anyone be bothered about it? Why should I care about it? Why should anyone care about this topic? So you then introduce the area or the field in which the problem exists. You might focus on facts and data to substantiate what you're trying to argue, what you're trying to understand, what you're trying to study. Please avoid vague and overly broad statements. There's no point of putting broad statements which might be easily challenged. So focus on facts, give data, substantiate, and show why is what you're trying to study important, and describe the major issues which you plan to address by your research. This is also a very good opportunity for you to set the boundaries, to scope to set the scope of your research. So you focus on major issues of your proposed research in order to provide a clear focus. The idea is to give a clear focus, set your boundaries, tell the scope, and therefore, for instance, in this title, if my scope is Indian metropolitan cities, I clearly outline that, of course, I'm going to focus on metropolitan cities and not say non-metropolitan cities or some rural setting, right? So that's how I set the scope, set the limit to my study. And then literature overview. Now, this is not a full-fledged literature review. At this stage, you cannot do a literature review. It's too much of a task. It might find a space in your thesis or dissertation later, but at this stage, what we really do is an overview. And there's a difference because what you end up sometimes doing is simply providing a summary, which is okay. It's okay to have that in your research proposal, but there is a difference between overview, a summary, and a review, a literature review, which is a synthesis, right? So what it looks like at this stage is a preliminary literature review, what is a preliminary reading basically, but not a full-fledged review. So while it's not a complete summary, but it's not also full-fledged literature review, it's somewhere in the middle of it, because you are simply at this stage reading up on what you're trying to research. You are going to flag some key texts, review some papers, some recent research publications related to your broader area, related to the topic that you want to study. You might search for literature which based on different databases, journals, books that exist. You might want to screen titles, abstracts, then select relevant studies. You might want to read the full text, extract key information, organize, and then synthesize your findings. You could identify probably gaps in literature and different patterns in the scholarship broadly. So you then end up writing the literature review, you revise it and finalize it. At this stage, it's still closer to synthesis, but not a full-fledged synthesis at this moment. You will end up doing it. And that's the reason to it, why I say this. It is because when you go on to do your research, when you go on to write your thesis, you will end up reading more. And chances are your literature review, what you call your literature review at this stage, will also get revised. It's not a full-fledged literature review till the very point of submission. And even after that, I would say. So it's really an exercise in summarizing key studies that are relevant to your topic, and you at least try to synthesize that literature with the area of your research focus. So basically, you have to ensure that whatever scholarship exists is in dialogue with the area of your research focus. This is the least that you can try to do at this stage. And then through that, you highlight the gaps that your research will address. But as you go into full-fledged literature review, which you will do when you write your thesis, it will be more than this. It will not simply be a synthesis, a summary with in dialogue with your research focus, but there you will have more chance to make your own stronger interventions, your arguments. You will be dealing with a whole set of different arguments and making your own argument, right? So just yeah, maybe just to flag that. Not everything under the sun has to be read. To note, not everything under the sun can be read. So let's not set up very great ambition at this stage. It's safe to just deal with the key texts. Engage with them, of course. Do not just list. It's not a listing exercise. It's not merely a summary document at this stage. There has to be some kind of engagement with your research focus. But at the same time, a full-fledged synthesis is also not expected. In many of the university guidelines, you're not expected to give a full-fledged research review, a literature review, also because the word count is less. Sometimes you're asked to submit a 2,000 word document or 1,500 word document. A literature review, a full-fledged literature review is simply not possible at that stage. Now I hand over to Vidushi, who will take you from here on. Yeah, Vidushi, over to you.
So thank you, Sana. As Sana was speaking, literature review, as you review the literature, you've already, when you decide a topic, you had certain questions in mind, and that's why you chose that particular topic. And that topic was important to you. So you already had certain questions in your mind. Then as you read the literature, you had either more questions in your mind, or you found certain gaps in the literature, or there were questions at the critical take on the literature which you had, which made you develop even more questions on in your mind. So finally, a very important part of your research proposal and any research process are research questions. I call it like a lens of the study because they kind of give direction to the research. They tell you exactly what is it that you're going to study, what is it that you're going to inquire about. So, after you have read everything, initially, whatever topic you had thought of, you had some inspiration, you had an experience, and that motivated you to take up this topic, or you read somewhere something and then that motivated you. But just note down the questions that came in your mind initially. Then you engage with the literature, as Sana was suggesting, briefly mapping out the literature, you engage with it, and then you have more questions, chalk them out as well. And then not all questions can be answered by a research a PhD research in general, or any research in particular, no matter whatever the resource constraints and the time constraints. So you select the questions that really bother you about that issue that you want to pick, and so you pick from those questions, and those become your research questions. And they kind of define the scope of the research problem. What is the scope of your research going to be about? And what it also does, and what you can do in these research questions is there can be central questions, and then there can be even sub questions. But any research proposal will maximum have one or two central questions, and maybe two maybe two central questions at max, and then one or two or three sub questions. That's it. So you don't have a list of 5 to 6 central questions. It's not that. It's beyond any research to, I mean, at least at the PhD level, because of the time and money constraint and everything, and single individual doing it, mostly what you'll be capable of doing is being able to address two research questions, two or three maybe maximum central research questions. Then you could have maybe one or two sub questions which kind of narrow it down a little bit. So the research questions are in the range of, they are like with question tags with what, why, how, and these are the main kinds of question tags that you will be asking questions about. So, what about this problem that I'll be addressing? What question might be there? There might be a how question. There might be a why question which in your research questions. So there can be different kinds of question tags in your research questions. It could look a little different as well. It differs from project to project depending on what kind of methods you're using, what tools you're using. But all in all, the idea is to tell you that research questions kind of are the lens for your study. So it's very important that you keep your research questions very sharp and pointed, and do not use vague words, abstract words. And it's a mistake everybody does, even at most stages of your PhD. I mean, I have done it very recently. So I know that we kind of tend to do that we become a little vague, but it's something that one should avoid. So whenever you are drafting your research proposal, the more clearer, concise your research questions are, the better your study design would be. So keep your research questions clear and concise, shorter, don't make them very long, and don't put unnecessary long terms there or jargons which you don't know, which are not very central to your work. So don't use words or throw around words in your research questions which you will not even be using in your study, the concepts which you will not be using in your study. Only key concepts that you will be using in your study should come in your research question primarily. And it should be short and crisp research questions ideally, not very long winded. So that's about where the research questions. Sana, could you go to the next slide? Yes. So research aims and objectives. Now, as Sana was mentioning, uh, if so, you have come up with the research questions for your study. You kind of know what your study would look like. I mean, I would also like to flag that suppose in Q&A, some of you would want us to maybe take you through some sample research proposal to just show you what a research question might look like. We could do that, because we're not taking concrete examples here because of paucity of time, but feel free to flag that question if you want us to do that. So research aims and objectives. One thing is, it's not always that all research proposals will have this. It's not required in most proposals, but still it's something that people like to include sometimes. uh, so we will so when you have, what it means by research aims and objectives is that you put them in bullet points, and they are specific goals that describe what is it that your study is going to achieve, what is its aim. And it gives an organized and structure to your study. So let me just go to the next slide to explain it to you a little bit more further. Sana, could you just go? So, like, one could say that what is really the difference between a research question and a research aim or objective? uh, and that's why a lot of times they are very interlinked. It's not like they're not completely interlinked. They are interlinked because one flows from the other, but there is a slight difference. So for example, a quick example is, are female headed households in urban areas disproportionately affected by poverty relative to male headed households? That's a research question you're asking. So you're going to study in your study, one of the research questions you may be asking is it so that female headed households are disproportionately affected by poverty? So this is your research question, which is very pointed and exactly tells you what you're going to do. On the aim of your study would then be a little broader, coming from this research question only, where the study will aim to achieve, to compare and contrast the poverty incidence, because through this you will not just be measuring poverty. Through this question, when you ask this question, you will not just be measuring poverty, you'll also be seeing the severity of it, you'll also be focusing on the living conditions of it. So in the aims question, you bring in all those ambits of what your research question will be able to achieve through your study. It will be able to compare and contrast the poverty incidence, how much poverty is there, how severe it is, what are the living conditions, and the difference between female and male headed households in urban India. So you see, it's related, but it also expands on that research questions and tells you exactly what is the umbrella of the research question will be able to achieve at the end of your study. Next, Sana. Um, so if that's so, those are like two blogs that people make for their research proposal. It's totally up to you if you want to have them separately. A lot of proposals, mine did not have a research aims and objectives. It's a little difficult also to explain research aims and objectives, especially in exploratory studies. So one only writes research questions there, and it's totally up to you how you want to go about it, and the expectations also from the institutions. The next is methodology. Now, this is very important part of your research proposal. I think, like when you have decided your research questions, then comes the methodology, which is not same as methods. So I'll use the example that Sana always uses, and it always helps to understand what is the difference between the two. Is that if you have to clean a room, if your research is about cleaning a room, then uh, the methodology, so your task or your research question is about or your research topic is about cleaning a room, then there are different directions that you can take in terms of cleaning a room. So you can clean the room sideways from the edges, or you could start from the center, or you could start from certain corners, and that directions that you're taking to clean a room, that is the methodology, which is guided by certain reasons, certain logic, certain set of philosophical principles, because of which you are taking a certain direction and an orientation to cleaning the room. Whereas a method is like what you will use to clean the room. You could use the broom, you could use a mop, you could use a vacuum cleaner. That is the tool. And with every tool, what you get as a result will be different. Uh, but with that tool, you will be trying to take this direction that you had decided for your study. And it's all interlinked. Now, those tools are part of the direction, the decision of entire direction of cleaning the room, the approach that you're taking towards cleaning the room is the larger ambit. Within that approach are various subsections, which is the tool, the in what time you will be doing the cleaning process, which room you will be taking up first to clean. So all that is part of the process of cleaning, which is part of the methodology. But the methodology is the general overview on the principles that you are using in cleaning a room itself. So it's the theoretical framework and approach that you use to clean a room, sorry, the approach that you use in your study, that is your methodology. So there you might be talking about certain concepts, you will be giving some clarifications about the concepts that you might be using in your study. You might establish certain operative definitions for your study there, which is to say that, for example, that if you are talking about urban India, what is the definition of urban you are working with? Because urban can mean several kinds of cities, tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, so many it's an urban is a wide term. Now your study might be only catering to a specific understanding of the urban, so you might want to give a clarification of that concept here. An operative definition for your study here might be established, and that also is that conceptual clarification is also part of the methodology. The larger theoretical framework, if you're using a feminist understanding to approaching your work, feminist methodology is guiding your work, then that is the methodology for your study. And then comes the methods. Now, you may want to talk about the theoretical framework, you may not want to talk about theoretical framework in your research proposal. It is expected that you would want to talk about these things and establish what theoretical tools you frames you're using, but it's not always required in all kinds of research proposal in all departments. So some people directly go, when they talk about methods section in their research proposal at a very initial stage, they directly go to the methods of the study, the methods of data collection, which is like, would you be doing surveys, would you be doing field work, would you be doing interviews, where will you be doing your study, for how long will you be conducting the study, what kind of sampling methods you will be using, whether you're going to use certain special techniques, and then also if you're going to use certain special forms of analysis like statistical analysis, or are you going to do GIS mapping. So all those kinds of deliberations happen in the section on methodology. Uh, so you talk about all the sample size, selection criteria, everything. So what it's important that you justify the methodology chosen for the study, that why you're choosing is even. So you take a certain approach to your study, take a certain theoretical framework for your study, or you choose to use certain methods for your study. They have to be linked to your research questions, that how are these methods going to eventually inform your research questions, that will justify why you have chosen them. They cannot be deliberate, arbitrary, and like chosen at random. There has to be reason of why I chose these certain methods, why did I choose this certain framework. So they have to be in conversation with your research question. So remember, it's an exercise in circle. Methodology is not disconnected, it has to speak back to your research questions, and it is better when you write, you kind of are able to indicate how it is connecting and reflecting on your research questions. Yes, next slide, Sana. Now, after that, you use references or working bibliography. Now, here in the research proposal, of course, one is that you will do in-text citation, that you will cite the sources within your writing. Like you've cited this particular author here, you cited this particular author here. So at the end of it, you will have a long references list, which is uh, but then, so some people ask you to have a references list, just the list of sources that you have used to write your research proposal. That is a references list, just the references that you have used to draft that proposal. Or you could have a working bibliography, a tentative bibliography, which is a little more expansive, which also includes other works that you're going to read during your PhD. So it just doesn't include whatever you have used currently to write your research proposal. But since, because of paucity of time, because you're just starting out, you collect a lot of material, but you don't read that immediately. You can indicate that that will be part of your tentative bibliography or working bibliography. And it can include a list of all the resources you have cited, but also the ones that you've been inspired by, you will be reading later on at some point of your research. Those can also be included. So now it totally depends on what the institution asks of you, of what kind of referencing you will do, whether just the references list or a working bibliography. uh, it's up to you. Second is, use a consistent citation style, very important. So whatever way you're citing inside, use the same citation style throughout the text and in the reference list. Uh, we have a session on this, on citations specifically. You can refer to that to see how citation is done, what styles to use, how to use those styles, and that would give you a little more clarification. So now if you go to the next slide. Now, next, ethics. As Sana said, not everybody puts in an ethics section, but if you're a person who's going to do qualitative research, it's mostly expected that you put in a section on ethics, which is what kind of ethical challenges you think you will be facing in the field work, or and then what how you will be responding to them. So, for example, what is your position as a researcher? That such kind of statements are important in ethics, and then that you will be taking consent from the people. If you're going to do field work and if you're going to have interviews, you're going to take their informed consent. You would maintain confidentiality, anonymity, and how are you even going to build trust with people? So such challenges that you sort of anticipate in the field, and how you're going to overcome those ethical challenges, and how so ethics becomes important, especially in qualitative research, to reflect upon. So ideally it should be a mandated thing for all kinds of researchers to have a section on ethics, and to think about the ethical challenges of their research. But so a proposal will have to have at least a small section on ethics, like 150 words or something on ethics. Yes, next section, Sana. Now, general tips for writing a strong proposal. Be clear and concise. So, as I said, avoid jargon and long winded sentences. So, try to write short sentences, simple sentences. Don't make it extremely complicated. Uh, it's really not so that a complicated sentence structure means necessarily a very innovative idea. It's not so. So please avoid that. The simpler the sentence is, easier for a person to understand. So clear and concise. Focus on the so like just a tip, like, so if your sentence is like 3 lines long, edit it, make it, divide it into two. So just check every time that, oh, have I written a 3-line long sentence and is it really needed? Then divide it into two, maybe. That could be a good check when you're finally editing your document. Focus on the significance of your research. Now, emphasize on the importance. It's important to, like, as we were talking about literature review, that you find a gap. Uh, just even if you're not just when you find a gap that my work is going to contribute in so and so ways, just emphasize that in your research a lot. Maybe in the section on introduction also it could be a line on significance. Then maybe when you're writing the statement of problem, again there could be a line on significance, or like some that highlights of how, what kind of conversations you will be having with the literature in general, and how it's you anticipate it will contribute to the larger field. Some people also have a section on significance of the research. They call it like significance as a section, significance of the project, and they write a paragraph on it. It's totally up to you. A lot of people build it into the literature overview, because to the end of the overview you highlight the gap, but you also say that how your research was going to contribute and build and address that gap. One thing to say is that not always finding a gap is important, and not always a gaping wide gap exists. When we say gap, all we mean is that maybe it is just about you. It could be a very significant piece of very significant debate, and you are just making a one small minor point through your research that you want to make. That is a gap, and that is your contribution, and it is enough. So do not feel too sort of, do not panic that, oh, there is no big gap that my research is addressing. Really, nobody is expecting you to make a significant, bring come up with a very significant novel idea which nobody has done ever. It's not so. It's always about those small minute gaps, and sometimes there might not be any gap. It is about you beginning having a conversation with the literature from a different direction, from a different perspective itself. A lot of creative works in creative fields and do engage are not necessarily about filling a gap, really. So the gap thing is a tentative thing. So but the whole point is that highlight the significance. How do you anticipate the importance of your work, and just stress on that when you're talking about your research proposal at several points and places. And use subheadings. Make your research proposal easy to navigate. So use subheadings, organize them into sections as we have just suggested, and seek feedback from your friends, peers, professors, from like writing to people, mentors, anybody. Just get in touch with them who are in your field and otherwise, and then just keep working on it. So keep taking constructive feedback and reworking on your draft and editing it. And first draft is never the final draft, so you will have to rework it and be ready for it. And the more you work and fine tune it, it will be better and better. So always, again, other thing though, you'll get a lot of suggestions from several directions. Also remember that at some point you'll have to say that this is not what I'm going to do, I just want to do this. So you should also know where you will be drawing a line. In the initial stages you're always confused. Whenever people are giving suggestions, you're like, oh, this also makes sense, this also makes sense. But remember, a research is a short term thing, you can't do everything. So keep it concise, and learn to say no to things that you cannot do and you don't want to also do. So you have to say no, and it's okay. So take suggestions, but take all suggestions into account, but only choose the ones that pertain to your project. Don't let everything unsettle you. That's also there. Yeah. Sana, next slide. Further resources, so we have flagged the difference flagged here some resources which we be sharing also with you this guide, and then you can also refer to these resources, which are very useful resources on proposal writing, how to build sentences, I mean how to structure it, and how to the literature review guide as well. So the next one, just the last bit on Zotero. Learn this tool on citation. Zotero, very useful. If any, we have done a session on citation and Zotero specifically. It's on our YouTube channel. Go there. So many of you might be familiar. If you're not familiar, it's a reference management tool. All you do is that you put in all things that you're going to read, are reading on this app or application, and then it automatically will be able to generate references for you as you're writing your document in the Word file. So use this. You will not have to do manual citations anymore. So very highly recommended. Please reduce your workload and use this. Just that. So with that, I'll finish and we can start the question and answers. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sana and Vidushi, both of you, for a very capacious session covering all aspects of research proposal. We'll now move on to the question and answer session. As mentioned earlier, you can raise your hands and ask the question directly as well. If not, you can then, post your questions in the chat box or send it directly to one of the speakers or to me. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So, in the meanwhile, I'll just check the meeting chat. I think there's somebody who has asked, how do we know, how are we going to achieve it? I have no idea when, in what context was this question asked. So, would you like to type it out again, or maybe just uh, open your mic and ask directly? What is it that you were trying to ask? Yes, please go ahead.
Hi. What I was asking is that how do we know that our research purpose, how are we going to arrive to it? How do we know that? For example, what if my research doesn't require conducting surveys? What if it doesn't require questionnaires? It's a descriptive research. So how do we know that? How are we going to arrive on it? मतलब कैसे कैसे करेंगे जब क्वेश्चनेयर लगेगा ही नहीं, सर्वे लगेगा ही नहीं, तो फिर मैं वो क्या मेथडोलॉजी में मैं क्या डालूंगी?
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Sana.
Yeah, maybe just add, yeah. So, what you're essentially asking is कि हमें मतलब how do we know what methodology to apply, right? So for that to be able to know how to apply a particular methodology, you need to be well versed in the different kinds of methods that exist, right? So for that to happen, you need to read books on different methodology. We can also signpost some resources which will tell us different methods that exist. What we can also do is, and we hope to do in the future, is we are going to conduct different sessions on research methodology. We've just done one recently this month on research methodology. Go there, have a look at that. We can also, of course, in the future, we'll be conducting more sessions. You can attend, feel free to attend those, because this is, see, as we grow in education, in our higher education, there are different, sometimes in our undergrad, sometimes in our masters, and then in PhDs, we do have different courses on research methodology. Attend those. Their YouTube sessions, attend those. Basically get well versed in different research methodologies that exist. And what you also have to remember is that depending on the question, what question is that you're trying to research on, that will define what method suits you the most, right? So if you could just tell us what is the research question that is bothering you that you're working with, we might be able to suggest some methods, but also know that there are different resources that are free, and we'll hopefully signpost those on our website as well. Vidushi, Monica, if you want to add anything to that.
Vidushi, yeah, if you want to add.
No, I mean, जैसे आप बोल रहे हो, if I mean, so as you were telling, so we also, as Sana was saying, exactly that's the thing that you need to figure out what your question is. Accordingly, you'll decide your method. But if I'm able to say that what you're going to be doing is mostly a kind of work which even so a lot of legal studies people do it, where they're just going to be reading documents, and it is going to be based on document analysis. What you can say, textual analysis will be there, या discourse analysis करोगे आप, वो अलग अलग चीजें हैं, आपको उसके बारे में थोड़ा पढ़ना पड़ेगा, but there is that will be your methodology. It's not like, or it will be your method that would say what kind of analysis you will be doing. That will be your primary data sources for you, which is the books basically. If you will have some, so that's your material. It's not like your the research is all about those people जो interview करते हैं या survey करते हैं. A lot of research is just about people reading and talking about debates and engaging with debates which are text based, and that is research. So as I was saying, it will really depend on your research, and it's as valid as any other research. For so you need to read on the spectrum of the research that engages with text primarily and works, and the research question is engaging primarily with debates in text and how then it's coming in conversation with that. So just that, I mean, if Monica wants to add something.
No, I think this is clear enough. If you have a quick follow-up question,
Yeah.
you can ask.
You can also maybe flag the research question that you're working with, and maybe we could just suggest something.
I'm sorry, we don't know your name. Sai Duck 0405. Your hand is raised. If you want to
Sorry,
quickly ask. Yeah.
my name is Saloni, and um, my question is answered कि I can conduct research on the textual basis. मुझे पहले ऐसे लग रहा था कि जो लोग सर्वे करते हैं, क्वेश्चनर करते हैं, वही रिसर्च हो सकता है, मेथोडोलॉजी वही हो सकती है. आई डिडंट नो कि डिस्क्रिप्टिव रिसर्च में हम टेक्स्ट पढ़ के भी और डिबेट पढ़ के भी रिसर्च कर सकते हैं. सो माय क्वेश्चन इज आंसर्ड कि हम डिबेट्स पढ़ के भी क्वेश्चन कर सकते हैं. थैंक यू.
So yeah, just to kindly quickly add to that, when we said method का definition क्या है सब लोगों के लिए? I just flag this again. Method are your tools for data collection. Now that can be any tool under the sun, really any tool under the sun. You want to do a text-based research, that's fine. You want to interpret text using hermeneutic techniques, that's fine. You want to do a discourse analysis, content analysis, आपको बस newspapers पढ़ के you want to do research, that's fine. You want to study internet-mediated research, do a research through internet mediation, that's fine. So visualization, that's any tool for data collection, not just surveys and interviews. Surveys and interviews are just very common tools of data collection because they're easily thoughtful, they're being used there, and we know how to do that. But you could get as creative as you want to with that. I think
Yeah.
Alaika has a question, and then some Moto
Yes.
also had
Alaika
raised. Yeah,
and
just yeah.
Motorola after that. Your hand was raised earlier. If you still have a question, then you can follow after Alaika. Yes, Alaika.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you so much for this session. It was really, really helpful. So my question is, like it was mentioned that we need to introduce our concepts, like write about the concepts in the introductory section as well as in the methodology section, there was concept. So supposedly, like for example, I will give like if I'm studying how poverty in urban India affects masculinity. So the definition, the operational definition of masculinity is something that I will be writing on the introduction in the introduction section, right? And how I am defining my population in such a way like urban poor, so that would come in the methodology section. Like, am I able to
I'll just
come across
yeah, I got
clearly?
you. I got your question. I'll just quickly put a clarification out there. So when I said concepts come in introduction, you don't have to define your concepts in the introduction. It's just that they will come in the introduction, right? So for instance, right now, if you're looking at say urban poverty, things like that, those terms will come up in the introduction, right? You can't avoid those terms. Those terms will come up in the introduction simply because you'll be saying, I'm studying urban poverty, I'm studying the impact of urban poverty on masculinity. So that's there. Those terms have already come up. You've given those terms in introduction. But defining those terms, grounding those terms in particular frameworks for how you understand those terms, what is your operational definition with those terms, that always feature it could feature in the literature review, it could also feature in the methodology. In the literature review, also because you will be talking about other people who've written on those terms. Based on that, you might then in definition in your methodology section root it more strongly that these are the concepts I'm operating in, this is how I define it. You don't have to do the defining part at all in the introduction, you just have to flag those concepts in the introduction, right?
Okay, thank you
I
so
hope
much.
like I've answered that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's clear. Thank you.
perfect.
Yeah. Vidushi, do you want to add something to that? No? Is
No,
it?
no, no.
Okay. Okay. All right. Um,
Moto.
Motorola, do you still want to ask a question? There are a few in the chat box as well, in case. Okay, I'll read out the question from the chat box, and in case you want to ask, you can raise your hand again. There's one question: is it necessary to mention the timeline in the proposal? When surveys will be conducted, when literature review will be done, etc. So, mentioning the timeline of the project itself, is it important to do it in the proposal?
सबको ऐसा लगता है.
So it really depends on the institution. Sometimes what happens is where you're applying universities and colleges, they give clear instructions that they do want to have a section on timeline. Now it's entirely dependent, really subjective. And if you want to include a timeline section, good. In abroad in many universities, they do ask us or expect us to put a timeline section, but in India, I've not really, when I did my research proposals here, I did not mention my timeline at all. I mean, you do sometimes say in the methodology section itself that in year one, I want to do the literature review, year two, I'll do the field work, in year three, I'll write the thesis and edit it out. But that's really optional, entirely up to you. If you want to make it more clear, if you have a clarity of how your research is going to be, then you're welcome to have a section on that.
Yes, I think, yeah, it's broadly just that depending on the demand of the institution where you are applying for a PhD or the institution you are writing the proposal for, it would depend on that. The next question is, I would like to ask if there's any difference between writing one proposal for here in India and abroad. Are there other standards, suggestions to be kept in mind while applying abroad? Also, if it's possible to give a small idea. Sorry, there's this emoji which I can't remove. SOP or another session, as SOP is asked along with proposal in institutes in India. I'm someone who has experience writing both here, but I would like to know how it is done while applying abroad, about basically writing SOP and research proposal differently when you're applying abroad and when you're writing it for India.
So, just to quickly answer that, if you are going to write a proper research proposal, there is no difference between the one that is submitted abroad and India. I submitted one abroad, the same that I really had given here. So there's no difference as long as you follow these elements, and these elements are taken, the components that we mentioned are taken care of. About the abroad things, I think EduAccess is an organization that is already doing sessions on applying abroad. We can signpost the website here, and you can also have a look at that. They've done immense and numerous sessions on SOP writing, applying abroad, how it's done. So maybe you can have a look at that. Their resources, yeah.
Absolutely. So I would just like to echo Sana's position that it is broadly the components remain the same, right? Now, with respect to what is the component that will require more discussion than the other would depend on which discipline you are applying to more than where you are applying, right? So, for instance, maybe if you're applying to an anthropology department, then the discussion on ethnography and methodology itself might need to be more developed right at the proposal stage than later on. Similarly, if you're applying to let's say if you're applying to political studies department, then the focus is more on the concepts and the theoretical framing of it in India, but it could differ slightly when you're applying to UK, let's say, where the political science department is more quantitative heavy. So it would depend on the requirement of the discipline more than with respect to where you're exactly applying, right? And the components broadly which we discussed today in the presentation, they remain the same. Yeah. Vidushi, do you want to add something or should we?
No, no. I mean, most that's just that. Also, if you're applying to scholarships abroad, then also the components change a bit. So just look at those requirements. Otherwise, so you have to just see for everything what the requirements are and just just take a cue from that. And as both Monica and Sana said, rest of the things apply. Yeah.
Right. All right, so let's move on to the next question that is also about application abroad. It says, I wanted to apply for Rhodes Scholarship and I wanted to do PhD through it. So please, may I know the process? See, for knowing the process about applying abroad, please reach out to Project EduAccess if you want, because that's the platform that provides this kind of assistance. Here, we are focusing more on learning how to read and write and do research. So if you have questions about the skills of writing research, the components of the research proposal itself, then you're encouraged to ask questions on those front. um,
I have just tagged Project Edu Access website, so you could
yeah,
refer to that. And there is somebody, I mean, we go to next question by Harsh. Also, somebody has asked, Mihar, I think, has asked us to
about
share
proposal.
on a proposal.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can pull something.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought we could take it towards the end after we have discussed all the questions. So the next question is to get an understanding of the topic to write research questions and objectives. How many literature review, a rough number, how many references should be included? This is like a constant question in all our sessions. How much is enough? How much of literature review is enough? How many references have to be there? Sana and Vidushi.
Vidushi, take this up. I've been answering it too often.
think the can't give you a number per se, but I'll just say this that we always say this that when you're doing literature review, and see, this is a preliminary stage, nobody is expecting you to exhaust the literature. So, what is expected at this stage is that you know certain key texts which is related to the field, which are like very important, fundamental texts. Then, some recent work which has happened, which you can get from the journals which are published in that field. What has been the recent kind of work? What has been the recent debate about your topic been like? So that it tells that you're informed. So that kind of an understanding of the fundamental texts and some of the recent debates works, especially related to what you are talking about. So now if I have to put a number to that, it's a little difficult to put a number. I just say an abstract number. I don't think it will make sense. What we can do
No.
is maybe when we show you the proposal. I mean, if I'm pulling out one, you can see what it looks like. But if I'm pulling out mine, it will have a tentative bibliography. It will look longer. Usually, the references within it must have been like some 20, 25 odd references maybe in it, which I would have cited. But the tentative bibliography is much longer than that, maybe. So it depends really. Sometimes it could be that way. It really depends on how much you've engaged with the idea, how much references it requires. So I can't give you a number. Maybe when we are sharing this thing, but just this should be the ideal. That have you engaged with the basic texts that have been there? Have you engaged with the recent debates? And a good idea of doing is that go through the journals, which are key journals in that area. See what kind of work has come out recently, what they are talking about related to your topic, and get a sense of it. We always say this that if you want to get a sense of what kind of work exists in your field, also check for review papers. Google, when you search, do a random Google search, you have an option to select review papers alone. Check for just the review papers that give you a very clear idea of what kind of field in a decade, what kind of work has happened in a field. Again, a good way to understand what has happened, what are the key texts, and who should be cited and what should be cited. Also, there's a politics to citation as well, which you might want to adhere to, might want to cite certain people and not other people. All of that can be talked about, but just this thing, I think, if you guys want to add.
I Yeah, I just so about searching literature, this has come up a lot of times. So we have separately done a session of how to search literature. You can visit our website, visit our YouTube channel, and have a go there and look at the sessions on how to search literature. But also, see, you will understand this because, as Vidushi said, Google Scholar is a good tool to work with. Google Scholar has options to give you review papers, but it'll so happen that when you keep reading and reading, the more you read into it, and when you look at the references of different readings, certain scholars will keep getting repeated. The moment you reach that saturation point that, okay, certain texts are getting repeated, they have been cited in one paper, they have been cited in other paper. To begin with, take a standard text, look at their references, follow those references, that reference list, go to those texts depending on the period that you're studying. If those texts are relevant to your work, go to those texts, then you branch into further texts. That's how the cycle, is created. And there will come a point when that certain text, certain authors, certain citations, certain references will keep repeating itself, and that's when you know you've done it. That's when you know that you've read enough. That's one way to do it. The idea is, see, imagine, I keep giving this analogy each time. It's like knowing a neighborhood. You've entered, imagine entering a new house into a new neighborhood. Initially, it's new to you, right? There are new buildings, there are new shops, there are new roads. But there comes a point that if you decide to step out again and again, there comes a point that you achieve that familiarity with that neighborhood. You exactly know where is the milkman's shop, where you exactly know where is the provision store, you exactly know where the park is. That familiarity is the same which will happen when you're reading literature. The moment you start feeling that same sense of familiarity with your reading list is when you know that you've read enough, is when you know that you have a good level of familiarity, and that's when exactly the citations will start happening. It's really got nothing to do with the number. Number is no determinant of how much you've read, really. It's not a maths test. Uh, you have to read as much as is needed to be able to be familiar with a particular topic. So yeah, going by the numbers, we don't do the number game here, I guess.
Yeah, I do not see any further questions. Okay, there's one more. Whether the proposal needs to mention where the study is going to happen, if it is context specific, like study area. I would say yes, of course, you will have to mention. So it would depend. So I'm assuming that if this question comes to your mind and your study is going to be an empirical study, which would, amount to some amount of either field work, or it could be archival, historical kind of study where you are studying a particular history of a particular region, then in both the situations you'll have to mention where the study is going to be conducted, right? Unless the work is purely textual and philosophical, you would have to mention the context.
Yeah.
Sana and Vidushi?
Just yeah, also add, you have to mention and also justify it in some sense. Like if you choose an empirical site, you'll have to somewhere explain why you have chosen that site, and that's an exercise you could do in methodology. But again, if the site is very key to your study, like it's the building ground of your work, it might even come early on in the introduction itself. So it really depends on how you're using the site for the study. Is it a site to situate any work, or is the site the central starting point of your study itself? Then it might come in introduction, but you'll have to justify why this site or whatever, as Monica was mentioning.
Great. I think with this,
Um,
um,
yeah, just before that, Vidushi, do you want to pull up the proposal quickly and screen share?
okay, there are more questions. So, as there was a mentioning of review papers, I was struggling recently to specifically locate them. Could any of you please tell once how to navigate this? Sana?
We'll quickly give you a sample. Let me just see if I can um, do it here for you. Wait a second.
I mean,
Ah,
while you are pulling up samples, maybe I can just make two announcements for a future
do that,
event.
yeah.
Yeah. So, firstly, we are very happy to inform that we are launching our reading pillar for Kashf in the next month, and it will run between late July to mid October. This is our first volume of the reading pillar, and in this volume, we are going to learn about how to read a text, followed by comprehensive reading intensive sessions on the writings by Gandhi and Ambedkar and their debates on important concepts of social sciences, violence, modernity, caste and gender, and state. This session is mostly directed towards undergraduate students. So, if you are interested or if you know students who would benefit from this, especially students from non metropolitan and underserved regions of the country, please do relay this information. And we'll shortly be releasing the registration forms and more details about the event on our website and on our social media handles. There's another session that will be happening towards the end of this month in Udia on the purposes and benefits or opportunities in higher education. Um, Sana, if you just want to finish this before we move on, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the details of the sessions, different sessions will obviously be mailed to you, but also social media is a good way to keep in touch and know all the sessions that we try to do off and on. So please be on the lookout for these sessions, and please spread the word. Let more people know about these initiatives which are running for free, and so much labor is being put into this by the team. So let the people who really need these initiatives, let them just know about this. So just to quickly pull up the review papers. So this is Google Scholar. You simply Google Scholar, a page like this opens. I want to know about history and memory to begin with, if that's what I'm working on. I quickly have typed history and memory here. These are general results that have come up on the literature. But if you look at here, where my arrow is, here, any type, review articles, simply click on this. And these are your review papers. So I hope that's addressed that question and that concern for you. Um,
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Sana. This was very helpful. Vidushi, are you looking for the proposal? All right, all right. So we'll probably shortly also put a sample of the proposal over here. Okay,
Can you see
you can
it?
see it on, yes, we can see it on the screen.
All right. So let me increase the size. Um, so if you can see, I mean, I ideally do not want to share my proposal because of the terminologies there. It has changed a lot. It was a proposal. It looks very quite different now, not very. But if you can see here, there's a tentative title. And this is one of the longest proposals I submitted. So let me just also tell you, sometimes proposals can be shorter than this. And that's depends on what the institute asks of you. So if you can see here, I have written a tentative title and I have given a title here. Uh, so I'm not going to go on the basic different aspects of it. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritties of the proposal. I might just go through the sections of it maybe. So here there's an abstract. So either you can have an abstract or, as Sana said, introduction, which is basically introducing the idea. And what I have done is in the abstract is that I have given an idea of what the literature field looks like, what has not been done, and what my work is going to contribute. So if you can see, it ends with the work proposes to study this, exactly what it's going to do, and where it is conceptually rooted, and what methods it is drawing from. So it's I kind of given a snapshot of the entire work in this entire bit of an abstract. Uh, it's not an ideal proposal. It has its own flaws. So I'm just sharing it that that this is somehow what it might look like. Then you can have an so this is an overview, which was so it's when I gave an abstract, it's like a short, very short 100 words. I'm just giving an idea of what my study is going to be like. So this is designed on the basis of what the institute wanted, and that's why the subheadings might look different. But overview, this is giving an idea of what I was trying to do in this study, and it introduces everything. It kind of tells us what normative thresholds mean, because I use the term normative geographies here, and I establish that I kind of tell what normative geography is, who's the key person who has written about it, and I'm drawing from them, and what I'm trying to do with that idea. And I introduce my key question here towards the end of it.
Vidushi,
uh
if you
yes, Sana.
quickly allow me to screen share, I might be able to share a shorter version of a research proposal, which might be more beneficial because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
to do
that would
with
be better.
Indian. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Just if you just can stop the. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, sure. Makes sense. That's what I was saying, that mine is a longer one. Better.
Yeah, so this is basically, if you can see, this is the screen. I had submitted this proposal for my CSLG exam and had gotten through. So this is how it looks like. PhD proposal. I've given a big title. I would in fact do with a shorter title now, but anyways, um, this is the introduction. As you can see, the first line is crisp, short. That's how every first line should be. It's a short introduction. You can see this is before the entrance. Like we have to submit this, the first draft, the proposal after the entrance, right? A very short introduction in which I've just simply stated, as I was trying to study judiciary and religious minorities, evaluating secular practices through the lens of legal hermeneutics, and I've quickly given whatever I wanted to study here in the introduction, right? As you can see, the last line of the introduction, the study seeks to map these inconsistencies and breaks, if any, in the judicial rulings on issues pertaining to religion and religious minority during the rule of ND and the current moment in comparison to the rule of UPA. So I was comparing the ND and UPA regime here. Then there's statement of problem, which is basically an elaboration of the introduction. And in the statement of problem, I basically talk about uh, religious minorities globally and how different judiciaries handle the case of religious minorities. So it's a global contextualization. Then I come to the Indian case, how in India judiciary has worked through the question of religious minorities. I talk about the constitution. I talk about different scholarships that exist. And then I quickly go to the research question. As you can see, there is no literature review here because back then we were not required to submit literature review on this proposal. So what I've done is I've integrated literature overview with the statement of problem. So for instance, I'm citing Tarun Khetan here and other scholars. So I've made it into one. But of course, literature overview can also be a separate section, and I would encourage it for it to be a separate section. Back then, we were supposed to just submit 2,000 words, so I had to do all of this in that limited word count. And then there's a separate section, research questions. Quickly, I had 5 research questions back then, but I would really say that these are all subsets of the first research question, and don't keep 5, please. 3 is good. All of these basically really are the subset of the first research question. And see the research question: what is the relationship between democratic deconsolidation and shifts in the judicial standings on the issues pertaining to religion and religious minority in India? That's all I'm studying. I'm simply trying to understand the relationship between democratic deconsolidation and shifts in the judicial standings related to religious minorities in India. That's all I'm trying to study. So there are three variables, really. Democratic deconsolidation is one, shifts in judicial standing is the other, and what effects does it has on religious minorities in India is the third variable out there. And therefore, my concepts, all my key concepts, my definitions would revolve around this. And then is a note on methodology in which I tell them what I'm going to do in my method. I basically, for instance, I describe the approach of legal hermeneutics. That's my lens to study this, right? I'm going to look at the doctrine of essential practices for that matter. By the time frame, I'm going to look at 2004 to the present moment. I look at three parameters, which is law's contribution to progress of change, its success in managing religious conflict, and possible implications for verdict of public politics. Um, so basically, I simply tell, yeah, in this how what I'm trying to do, what my subject will revolve around. It's a comparative study. It's an interpretive exercise approach. Is legal hermeneutics. So that's what I try to yeah highlight in my methodology. And see, I'm not doing any surveys and interviews in here. I'm not sure I will do it, so I don't mention it here. Um, it's simply a very legal doctrinal work that I was planning to do back then. And there is a tentative bibliography, which is what 3-page bibliography, but it might have text. Since the tentative bibliography, it might have text which might not have been cited in my research proposal, but otherwise will form an important part of my discussion. So I hope that this sample, uh, yeah, kind of clarifies what this is supposed to look like.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vidushi and Sana, for the very useful sample documents. If anybody has any questions with respect to what we have just shown, you have 10 seconds to raise your hand and ask it.
There's some chat up there. Okay, this one.
It's me. All right, then, I think we are towards the close of the session. Before we end, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our panelists for their time and valuable insights, and to all of you in the audience for your participation. I also would like to thank Kashf team members for all the work that they put in to make this possible. We will also shortly circulate feedback forms. Please fill in those so that we get to know what is working, what is not, where we can improve. If you have any queries or would like to reach out to us, please feel free to email us at contact@kashfinitiative.com, which is, you can find this email ID in the chat box as well. For those of you who want to stay updated about our future events and resources, please subscribe to our newsletter by visiting our website. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss out on upcoming sessions and opportunities. I've already mentioned that there's one session going to be in Oriya on opportunities in higher education towards the end of this month. And from July end to mid October, we'll be running reading sessions for undergraduate students on a topic related to Indian political thought and how to read a text. Also, if there's any topic that interests you and you think that we should be discussing, please feel free to let us know through our email ID, and we'll be more than happy to accommodate that. Also, we'd be more than happy to also organize targeted sessions for your college or department or class or even a small group. Our goal is to make these sessions as accessible and relevant as possible to meet your needs. This is why we now also record the sessions and we put it up on YouTube channel, which you can later watch, or you can at least also ask other people to watch who have not attended this session. Um, you can reach out to us anytime. We are here to help you on your research journey with what we have learned on our journey and we wish that we had learned. To stay updated, I would just repeat that please visit our website and do also give us a shout out from your end if you think that these sessions have been helpful. It really boosts us because that's all that keeps us running. Thank you so much again for coming. The slides will also be uploaded on the website, so you can always visit the website and get the resources that we mentioned and slides for various sessions that we have done so far. Thank you so much once again for joining and hope to see you again. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much.